exceptional leaders tend to reject more of what is not for their highest and best use. And so the more that you can focus on what you are great at and defer, delegate, don't do all of the rest, the better. And the more you can support people around you to get to that highest and best use, boy, you're being wonderful and you're just making for a better world.
Hello, Profit entrepreneurs. I am so excited. We have a very special guest today. We're going to talk about exiting your business and what that looks like. We have a very special guest today. His name is Robert Jordan, the CEO of InterimExecs. And what he does is he matches top executives with companies around the world. And based upon his research, he and Olivia Wagner, they wrote a book called Right Leader, Right Time, Discover Your Leadership Style for a Winning Career and Company. He's also an author. His book is How They Did It, $1 Billion Insights from the Heart of America, and also a book called Start With No, which is a bestseller on negotiations. Definitely make sure you guys check that out. But please join me in welcoming Robert to the platform. Today, we're going to talk about exiting your company, right? Exit strategies and setting your company up for sale. Some of you guys know it, and some of you guys don't. We actually divested our traditional accounting and tax practice last November, and definitely learned quite a bit about divesting and exit strategies. So I'm really excited today to bring Robert here, who's going to talk firsthand about really setting your company up so that it sells at the top multiple. So please join me in welcoming Robert Jordan to the platform. Hey, Robert, how you doing today?
Suzanne, I'm doing great. I'm thrilled to be with you. I am a huge fan of Profit First.
Well, it's definitely been a life changer for many people across this country and a lot of our audience here that's implemented. So definitely we will let Mike Michalowicz know it is an amazing thing that he discovered with that. But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
So I always love the backstory. I like to understand how people get started in the roles that they get started in. And how did you get into this exit strategies and placing executives with companies around the world? Tell me a little bit about that.
I'm your classic entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 26. It was a company called Online Access. It was the first magazine in the world that covered online and internet. The short story is I did that for a number of years and sold it to a big publisher. Yay, go. The more detailed story is I was 26 and made pretty much any mistake you can make in business. And after 2 years, the business went bust. And I bought the rights out of bankruptcy court. I started again. And we all know what happened with the internet. At some point, I could do no wrong. It put me on the Inc. 500 list for fastest growing businesses, which was great. And, eventually got out of that and had learned about this really weird job title called interim CEO, and had met a guy who was probably the first interim CEO in the US. And he showed me his business card. This was the start of the internet revolution, and it said CEO of Yahoo. And we knew Yahoo was going to go public on zero revenue, not zero earnings, but no revenue. Yahoo went public. So my friend who I told him, you're now my mentor. He had this remarkable success, and he taught me how to do project-based leadership roles, which I did for a number of years. And then social media came around, MySpace, Facebook, LinkedIn. And so we launched an organization called InterimExecs 16 years ago, and became this go-to matchmaker around the world for organizations that had project-based leadership needs. But I'm excited to talk with you specifically about owners and exit strategies, because over the years, we've worked with a lot of private equity funds and public companies and foreign and US, and that's just not enough focus. And so we really now are dedicating ourselves to owners at the point of exit, because it is the most critical decision the owner makes in their business career, and they only get one shot at it.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a legacy move. I remember when we went through our divestiture and our sale, we were fortunate. We ended up getting 4 offers in 2 weeks, and then they kept coming to the point that we had to say no more, because I don't want to go into tax season And one of the biggest lessons that I learned was, the best time to sell a company is when you are absolutely in love with it still. When I put it on the market, it was really kicks and giggles. I didn't expect to be selling it. It was just to see what it was worth and make decisions from there. And it was definitely enlightening seeing that happen. But I'm excited today because we can talk about what makes a business sale, because reality is, when a company sells, it's not just based upon revenue. It's based upon a percentage of revenue, but it's also based upon a multiple profit too. People don't buy businesses that are failing. So profit first is still important with that. And another thing that's important is a company that runs without you, a company that has a team, that has a structure. And so today, let's talk about if someone is thinking about retiring one day, right, and leaving their business, which is a legacy build, right? What are the things that they need to start putting in place now in order to get that happen? Also, maybe, Robert, you might have some thoughts on how far in advance do they need to start planning for this?
It's a great question, Suzanne. And part of this, where this is timely, is that there's a law that's going into sunset in a couple of years that is going to change dramatically the dynamics for an owner in terms of passing wealth to next generation or whoever. And for a lot of owners, the primary source of their wealth, it's their company, right? And so as you're approaching this exit, hopefully you're a year, 2 years away from it, and you have time to be thinking about what you're going to do. So to your point, one of those things is, how do you maximize the value, and more specifically, the profit within the business? Now, I have my bias, but because I'm surrounded by these outstanding executives, this is what we do. And to go in on behalf of the owner and take care of projects that are absolutely going to cause the most maximum growth that they can come into. They want to come into this process, whether it's formal or less formal, of selling, in the strongest position that they're in, right? And that will command, to your point, the highest multiple. Sometimes it's based on revenue, based on business. For example, SaaS companies, software as a service, they're selling strongly as multiples of revenue. Most traditional businesses are going to sell as a multiple of earnings. And there are different classes here. If your earnings are under $1 million, it's great. You're still making something, but you're in a different class of multiple than if, for example, your business is making 3 million, 5 million or more of earnings. Those multiples are simply higher. And so there's a whole range of things that you think of as you look at your business across finance and sales and marketing and where you are in the marketplace. All of that is contributing to a great exit. When you get to the exit, now you have a range of things to consider. Is there a next generation you're passing this along to? Are they ready? Are you exiting to what everyone calls a strategic, otherwise known as some bigger competitor? Are you going to sell to private equity? Do you not like private equity and you'd rather, there's some kindred spirit out there? You've gone through this, so you know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of all of these variables.
Definitely. I love it. And when Robert's talking about a multiple of earnings, he's talking about EBITDA. So that's earnings before income taxes, depreciation, amortization. He's talking about cash. Okay. Cash profit is what he's talking about there. So cash is king, profit first, guys. And so if we're like 2 years away or even more, right? I think that somebody should be planning their business for sale day one and building a company that is structured to sell day one. Where do they start? Where's the best place to start with creating that business that's going to be attractive, that's going to get 4 offers in 2 weeks?
Well, one of the first things is look to the structure and the value of your team. And, one of the disciplines we had been talking about before, there's a system called EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. And one of the ideas in there is you look to your organization chart, even when you don't have all of the roles filled out, but to see what are all those roles. You have this future vision for your company, and it is robust. And even if some person or you as the founder or owner are filling out multiple roles, you at least know how that expansion and growth can occur. So one of the first things is looking at your team and look at the robustness of your team. And in particular, this concept of, is it self-managing? It's a critical thing if you are the owner of the business, which is, can this business survive and thrive beyond you? It's a key thing to be thinking about. I mean, if you're selling and the idea is, if you're not selling all of it and you're sticking around for 3 to 5 years, or you're passing it to your children and they expect you to be there for a while, you have a grace period and you have time. But if you are at the point where really, really it's an exit, then the stronger that self-managing component of the entire business is, the higher the value of the business is going to be.
I love that. So you guys want to make sure that you have a self-managing team, right? So that process, people that are independent thinkers that can run the business without you. We talked about the key role, the implementer. Those are the things that are going to be very important for creating that business that sells. So how do you start to build a team or business that functions without you?
There are a number of ways, in terms of internally, think of your own dynamics, your people, and how they're reinforcing each other. Listen, we live in a modern world where most businesses, this is not just a question of where that answer is your employees, right? Because most businesses now, they take advantage of the fact that there are outside resources that do not have to be full-on employees, right? Resources and organizations that fulfill roles for you that have been outsourced. This is true whether you have a small business or you have a big business. In our particular case, our stock and trade, our claim to fame is that in the management suite, you now have this ability to take on executive level resources, and they do not have to be on your payroll. They're not part of your permanent overhead. And yet you can accomplish structural improvement in your business. So for example, if your business is not large enough where you can afford a full-time CFO, right? It used to be, tough luck, you're going to have to get bigger, right? You just couldn't afford them. These days, it's not the case. There's an entire category of executive talent called fractional CFO. And so you see many businesses too small for full-time, but they do just fine on a part-time fractional CFO who accomplishes the exact same purpose of being strategic for the business, of helping to, for example, supervise a bookkeeper or controller or VP of finance, thinking strategically about your business, and you don't have to spend the full ticket on them.
Love it.
And this is now true across the C-suite. So for example, your business needs a technology upgrade. Well, now there are roles of CIO and CTO that, again, they don't need to be full-time. And this is the beauty of the modern world.
I love it. Absolutely. You get that brain genius without, having to necessarily pay the full price. I know we do fractional CFO work, and, a lot of times if you would hire someone that had the Anderson experience, KPMG experience, that worked in the work that I've done, you're probably paying a few $100,000 for that person to come in and do that. But you get it for a fraction, almost like an entry level position is what you get it for. And you get that level of experience coming into your organization. So it's amazingly right. Now, one of the things that people struggle with when it comes to bringing in that type of talent or that implementer role is it's finding the person, right? Because I'll be honest with you, Robert, I have seen people slap CFO on their resume or on their portfolio. And I'm like, you probably should be an entry level accountant or bookkeeper. I'm just going to be honest with you. Or they're not connected to the right circles to know that type of brain power. And also there's a personality click too, right? There's some personalities that you're like, I get you're the brain, but man, I can't stand being in the room with you. So how do you go about finding the right person to fit this role?
You're giving me a lob shot, Suzanne, and I appreciate it because, InterimExecs, we've built an organization over 15 years. We've had 7,500 executives show up on our proverbial doorstep. That's a line of people about 5 miles long if they were outside your office door. And we developed ranking and scoring and screening. And that active curation has been critical because, well, to just be honest with you, the vast majority of those executives, you would describe their careers or leadership journey as okay, but not great. And you and I as owners have a very high bar for what we will spend money on. This is the nature of owning your own company, boy, is that if it's an expense and, it better be worth it. And so in our case, we developed curation at this incredibly high level of looking at the top 2 or 3% of executive talent. And at that level, it's exceptional. To your point, though, it's not just what's on paper. So to hear that, an executive, for example, took a division and it was at 20 million and they took it in 3 years to $200 million and then they moved on to their next project. That's exceptional, right? In our case, the bar is even higher because they still have to have the right attitude for this kind of work on behalf of owners, which is to say they're very eager, they're very enterprising, they're very engaging, and there's still humility. That's really hard. Hard to not only be this, gold medal champion, but you have this humility to understand it's not all about you. Those are qualities that can make for people to go in this kind of work and have immediate impact, who are not trying to embed themselves, not trying to play politics, to go in and to tell the owners the truth, speak truth to power. And that's what we find is the strength of bringing these project resources, which is because they're not going to stay. They're not angling for some full-time job. They're being paid to tell the truth. That's not easy if it's your permanent job and you need it.
Oh, yeah. And it's a talent that you don't come out of school with that. That's probably thousands of hard conversations before you become to that point that, hey, fire me, but this is the truth.
Yeah, and look, we each have our career journey, and successful people in that journey, when you're fresh out of school, you don't necessarily know if you take the job at this company or that company, and what's my right role. You can't know all of that at 22. But what happens over time for successful people is that they become more and more intentional, and their choices make more internal sense to themselves, and their confidence grows. Legitimate confidence, not false, but true understanding. In the book we just did, Right Leader, Right Time, we have this phrase we love called highest and best use. And we've looked at a lot of executives, and those exceptional executives tend to reject more of what is not for their highest and best use. For young people listening to this, I'm not making light of it. It's so hard to do. My daughters are in their 20s, young in the workforce. I don't make light of this. They need the job. Their dad is tired of having them on the payroll. Okay, let's be clear. And so they need to perform, and they, need to conform themselves. What happens for people who are successful in their careers more and more is more intentionality and more choice. It's a little like when you go to the eye doctor and they say, which lens, A or B, which is clearer? And then they say, which lens, C or D? And this is how we make career choices over time, which is which more speaks to your heart. Where's your soul resonating that's saying, this is where I need to be? And if, you can get that clarity over time, you're blessed, right? And you will have more success to be able to listen to what's going on inside of you.
Definitely. So as a business owner who is looking to start that exit strategy, who's looking to fill that key player, where does it go wrong? Where does it go wrong in this relationship?
Well, the start here is with the owner of the company. We all have our strengths, and we all have things we should leave alone. And so the more, call it a fearless inventory that the owner or owners of a business can take in terms of where their strengths are and where there are things they really ought to have outside expertise coming in, whether that is on their team, their permanent team, or outsourced functions or outsourced resources. I think that fearless inventory always starts with ourselves, with us, and then moves to our team and all of our resources. And, Suzanne, this is in some ways harder than ever because markets move. And, for a lot of us in business, you and I are recording this in 2023. And what happened about 6 months ago? Chat GPT happened. And there is now a flood of AI coming into the market. And that genie is out of the bottle. And we're not going to get into a conversation about is it good or bad? It is. It is. And so there are many businesses where factoring in how you can use this. I'm not talking about threat. I'm not talking about job loss. I'm talking about using a new technology, which despite calling it AI. It's not intelligence, human intelligence. It is not human creativity. It is a new tool, but it's a major new tool. And I think it's on the order of, there was the microchip and it was big, and there's the computer, big, the internet, big. This, in terms of how AI is going to assist all of us in business, big.
It's a great first draft of anything. Definitely with that. And definitely it shows that it's going to challenge all of our levels of getting more creative and thinking even at a higher level to keep ahead of the machine with that. And so what else should a business owner do?
By the way, Suzanne, sorry for interrupting you.
Okay.
This is something that your listeners, your forward thinkers here, that some of this is internal to the functions and how the business works and your customers and your assets and all of your strengths. And some of this is throwing you into a creative mode. Put your visionary hat on for a moment, because this outside force is here, this thing AI. And how is it that affects me that I can take advantage of, so that the next person that owns this business, I have prepared them for it. And this is something that's possible for a lot of us, because a lot of the AI development getting funded now are for platforms, and they're for platforms for all kinds of business to take advantage of. You don't need to reinvent AI to be able to use it. And for people that are like, oh, it's never going to apply to me. Well, I don't know, taxi drivers, when they heard about Uber and Lyft, who said, yeah, I'm just going to keep driving my cab. Well, technology came for you and it had impact. And so putting on your creative hat or getting resources around you to think about how this is going to help you, not the threat. I'm not getting at the, oh my God, my job is gone. I think it's going to be a technology like others that will empower us.
Definitely. And for some of us, it's go ahead and exit, right, before it takes over. I was in New York City. I don't think I saw any yellow cabs. Like there was a time that like yellow cabs blocked the entire street. And now it's just probably Ubers under disguise that are blocking the street from that standpoint.
You and I, as we're brainstorming here, you are an expert in profit first. This is a new and better form of accounting and discipline for all entrepreneurs, period, hands down. AI is going to absolutely benefit you, because in terms of a mechanism to go help you as practitioner and then, out to all of your clients, this is a new form of discipline that has not existed in the world in terms of thinking about this, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. So Robert, what else should a business owner do to prepare themselves for sale?
Well, there are going to be resources and experts coming to help you along the way that you have not had before, right? And so we represent a kind of expertise here into the C-suite to help internally, but there are other resources to take advantage of. So for example, you're going to want an investment banker for most any business. In most cases, owners, especially if they have some significant profits, there absolutely should not be attempting to do this on their own. They need the expertise of an investment banker, and to the extent that, hopefully wealth is being accumulated here up front, they should have a financial advisor or a wealth manager who is looking out for them. So the resources around them, and they need you, their team, including their accountant and their lawyer, are critical players here to get through this process. If they have a board, that board better be additive to the process. If they don't have a board, I don't know about starting a board at the 11th hour. That's not going to be additive. But all of these professional resources are needed because, here's the scary part. You were successful in closing your transaction. Not all deals close. And, we have long history through all of the work that we have done in successfully helping owners exit. It's not 100%. And so you can have a process where you get to a term sheet, you have a signed LOI, letter of intent, and then you never make it through diligence and the deal does not close. And sometimes you can blame external circumstances, sometimes the market blows up and whatever, but in a lot of cases, it is that business was not rigorously preparing itself for exit. So for example, when you bring on an investment banker, they're going to go through rigorous process. They have their own diligence. They're going to prepare a data room. They're going to do it the way it needs to get done. And so take advantage of all of those resources to get the best exit that you can.
Oh, yeah. And you will go through that period of due diligence, and it'll be like standing there naked, guys. I mean, they're going to look at your bank statements. They want to make sure that cash is real. They're going to be looking at your contracts, your accounting system. So definitely, if you don't have that right and together, you want to get that together as soon as possible, really, with that. It's got to be ready to go.
Yeah, we've been a key player in helping transactions that were remarkable. We've been in IPOs, we've been in exits that were crazy high multiples for owners, and they love it. We have also seen this blow up. We have seen companies that failed in diligence and in contract negotiation, and this is why you need these resources at hand. It is truly that expression, the devil is in the details. That is totally true here. Totally true. And, for those owners, this is your sacred baby. This is it. And so you prepare for this in the same way that you have, excellence in the business that you run. You need that same kind of thinking here. It's just that now your product is not the product or service you sell, but the product is the business itself. And it's going to sell one time, maybe two times if you sell, not 100%, say to a private equity fund, and then you stay and turn around and sell it. But that's the mindset you have to have as the owner.
Love it. Love it. Now, Robert, as we start to close down, this was such a great conversation. I think a lot for our audience to think about of really good juicy pieces that they need to start putting together. One of the things that we like to ask our guests is if you could leave one piece of advice, it can be business or personal, what would that piece of advice be?
Thanks, Susanna. I'm going to close by repeating one of the things I said before. And if it doesn't resonate for listeners, then I'd say think about it for someone you love, like, for example, a child who works, which is exceptional leaders tend to reject more of what is not for their highest and best use. And so the more that you can focus on what you are great at and defer, delegate, don't do all of the rest, the better. And the more you can support people around you to get to that highest and best use, boy, you're being wonderful and you're just making for a better world.
I love it. And Robert, how do our viewers and our listeners, how do they find you to learn more, to connect with you?
Thanks, Suzanne. I can be reached at InterimExecs.com. And if any of your listeners want to take the FABS Leadership Assessment, it is at rightleader.com.
And what I'll do for you guys that are driving, that I don't want any accidents happening. So I'm going to go ahead and put Robert's information in the show notes. So when you get to that safe place, you'll just be able to click on the links and go ahead and take that assessment and connect with them. Thank you, Robert, so much for just sharing your knowledge today and really giving us some insights to think about.
You're wonderful, Suzanne. Thanks very much.
Thank you.